Hello. I'm going to see whether I can tell a story. It's not the first time that I've told the story, and perhaps it won't be the last. But it is the first time that I have told the story to a camera. So let's see how it goes. About 10 years ago, about that, I was in the northeast of Thailand, in a village. I don't know whether the geographical location is important, but it could be. I'm out the back of a house, private residence, kicking around in the jungle. And actually, I wasn't in a very good state of mind at that point in time. That may also or not be relevant, but I was feeling a little desperate. And I was looking for some means to distract myself. So I was just out there in the jungle kicking rocks. And there was an old abandoned pigsty there. And leaned up against the side of the pigsty was a round of wood, like a puck of wood. You know, when you cut a piece out of a tree, maybe about this thick, and it was would have been quite a large tree, and it would have been a tree like a ficus or something that had a kind of it wasn't a round puck, it had this kind of convoluted shape to it that was interesting. So I wanted to look at it, and it was leant up against the pigsty. So I went over and I squatted down, and I started tilting it down, lowering it to the ground so I could look at the grain and whatever was going on. And as I was lowering it down, something caught my eye that it had been on the hidden side, and as I was moving it down, now I could see it. And the first thing that I thought it was like a mycelium, like a little fungus, little white filaments fluttering in the breeze, as it were. But for one thing, it's kind of it would be quite unusual to have just this little fuzzy ball of mycelium sprouting out of the wood in this one spot. But also the way that it was moving, there wasn't really wind. There wasn't really the wind to make it. It was kind of trembling. So as I'm lowering this thing down, I'm homing in on this thing. What is it? Is it a fungus? Is it some kind of cobweb with something stuck in it? Or what's this movement? What's this? What's going on, right? And so I started focusing in and squatting down, because now the wood is flat on the ground. And I'm looking at this thing, and I couldn't really understand what I was looking at, because these, I was getting down level to look at it, and these little hairs the closer I looked in, they didn't so much resemble hairs as tiny little points of light moving up and down very quickly. So like when you move a sparkler up and down, you get that line, right? You get that image. So these little points of light moving up and down so fast that it made the impression of a hair that was wibbling, but actually it's a little point of light moving up, and there were a whole load of them. Cluster, like maybe the size of a match flame, and the size and shape, kind of like a flame, not a match flame, not a match flame flickering in the breeze, so more, a little more like a candle flame or something. This had this dense, rounded kind of shape to it. And then I saw the legs, because I'm looking at this thing and I was seeing that actually it's not, it wasn't on the wood. This little ball of flame-like filaments light thing was just above the wood, and it was on legs, 4 legs, in a cross. So I call this thing a cross and filaments because it had these 4 legs that looked like mosquito legs. They had a single articulation, right, like this, and they were black, and the tip was white, like a magician's wand. Very fine, like a spider leg or a, but also, not hard to say, like, is this, it didn't exactly look like an insect, like insect legs are kind of hairy or whatever. This was just black, perfectly engineered, as it were, with this one articulation, and then these very obvious white tips, like a magician's wand. I must have thought it at the time. It's like a black and with the white tip. Reminded me of the magician's wand. So, and you couldn't see the cross where the legs crossed because that's where the filaments were, right? So you couldn't really see what's the interaction, how are the filaments attached to the legs or what? But now we're dealing with, 4 legs, which, now I'm thinking, I don't know how the thought process went in the time, but, versus all the thoughts I had about it later. But let's imagine, for example, that this is some kind of craft, right? It's not a biological organism. It's the legs are like the legs on the lunar lander. And then the filament thing seemed to be alive, seemed to be, like it could almost have consciousness or something. And so I was very curious. And I didn't think I was hallucinating, and I don't believe that I was hallucinating. It didn't have, it was just, everything was far too real and coherent. And also, an ant, single solitary ant, started wandering across this wood, and in the direction of the cross with filaments. And as it got close, as it got right up close to it, it changed direction very clearly. It perceived that there was this thing there, and it didn't want to go in that direction, changed direction. I said, okay, it's not just me. The ant's seen it as well, right? I'm seeing the ant, I'm seeing the cross and filaments, and I wanted to touch it. I wanted to, or interact with it somehow, the cross and filaments. And so I thought to touch it, but I was squeamish, I didn't want to touch it. So I thought to pick up a stick off the forest floor, the jungle floor, just pick up a little stick or something, and maybe, give it a nudge, give it a prod. And at the moment, same instant that I had that thought, this thing jumped. It jumped forwards away from me, and it disappeared. It vanished. I've never seen, like in a movie, I've never seen a thing vanish before or since. That it's like in that way. That it is physically there, and it of course, it was a very small thing, and the whole thing was very weird. So I did think, well, maybe it didn't vanish. Maybe it landed on the ground there. But it would have been obvious. And I looked for it. I'm just got to kill a tick. So, I looked for it on the ground where it would have landed had it not actually disappeared in midair. But it did disappear. That was my perception. I mean, that's what I witnessed. So, I mean, if you could believe everything else I said about it, you can believe that it disappeared in midair. That's what a cross and filaments does, one of the things that it does. And, later I looked, 10 years ago, Google was pretty good. You could find what you were looking for. Google online, whatever, web search, excuse me. And I did find my way to a website dedicated to strange sightings, paranormal sightings. And you had all kinds of photos and accounts and security camera footage and so on and so forth. And some of it seemed quite legit, and some of it was obviously hoax. But everything that was described had an anatomy such as, it has a head, it has legs, yes, but probably eyes, fingers or claws or something. Right? And what I saw was definitely not an insect. Yes, insects, you can find an insect that's had a couple of legs removed. But this was not, it had no anatomy to speak of. Legs aren't necessarily anatomy. If they're legs on a table, I guess that's not anatomy. And I did have the notion that perhaps, since I was in a moment of distress, whatever this visitation was came to offer me some encouragement or some thing. But I haven't figured it out yet. So if anyone has seen a cross and filaments or has any idea, I do have one other idea, which is that not necessarily that this was a pure hallucination or a confabulation, something that I made up, or something that there was nothing there and my mind made it up. But it could be that there are things that could be invisible or could allow themselves to be seen and take a certain form. And that form could be different. So maybe someone else would see a fairy, a dancing pixie, a little man of the woods. And what I saw was a cross and filaments. Thanks for listening to my story.